And we're back in my basement home gym like we never left. I'm going to skip the exaggerated wind-up, get right into it. It is Friday, July 3rd, 2026. We are hours away from July 4th. There are two very important cinematic milestones, if you want to use the phrase cinematic milestones. I'm not sure that I'm even saying that correctly. I'm not sure that cinematic milestones means what you think that I think it means, as I once again referenced Princess Bride. But today, Tom Cruise turns 64. He is 1 year away from being a senior citizen. And, you know, it doesn't seem that crazy with me 12 years younger than him. Tom Cruise has been a big star from as far back as I can remember. When Top Gun came out, it felt like, okay, well, this guy's already been around for, a little bit. And then by the time of A Few Good Men, he was still in his 20s when that movie was shot. And it's like, this man's been around forever. How could he still be in his 20s? So I think 64 feels just about right. Happy birthday to the last movie star, Tom Cruise. And I've talked about Cruise an awful lot on the channel because how could you not? On a movie-centric podcast, he has arguably had the greatest star career in the history of cinema and top 5 greatest careers, period, as producer, as actor, as movie industry promoter. Remember what he did with Barbie and Oppenheimer a couple of years ago at the expense of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. He's telling people to go see those other movies. You will never get a finer movie ambassador than Tom Cruise. Even with all the goofy stuff, the Scientology, jumping on Oprah's couch 21 years ago, he is the man. And I hope he wins an Oscar someday because 2 separate films, Always a Bridesmaid, Never a Bride. He's with Paul Newman in 1986 as The Color of Money. Newman wins his only Best Actor Oscar or acting Oscar of any kind, which is a fucking joke. I mean, we talk about the Academy, it's political. Everybody loves to say stuff like it's political. What does that even mean? I don't think that means what you think it means. But Paul Newman had never won an Oscar. He gets a Lifetime Achievement Award, and then he stars with Tom Cruise in The Color of Money. Cruise steals the film from him. I remember Tom Cruise. Oh, Paul was in that movie too. Yeah, it's supposed to be his movie. Sequel to The Hustler. Cruise doesn't even get the courtesy of a supporting actor nomination for his amazing work in that film. Newman just walks in there and wins the Best Actor Oscar the year after. The Academy basically, as an apology, well, let's give this guy a Lifetime Achievement Award like Cary Grant after he had retired. Let's give him a Lifetime Achievement Award since we didn't see fit to give him an actual award in the time in which he was active, but Newman upset the apple cart there, thanks to Tom Cruise. 2 years later, he is phenomenal in Rain Man opposite Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman gets Best Actor. Where is Tom Cruise's nomination? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe that was political too, right? Whatever that means. Maybe that's what it was. But I did not come here today. That's what she said. To talk? What are we going to talk about? I just wanted to give you the Tom Cruise warm-up on his 64th birthday. But what I really wanted to talk about, spoiler alert, is a film that was released 35 years ago today. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. What many people consider to be the single best summer movie or film released during the kind of peak of summer movie season ever made. And I kind of agree with that. Because historically, there have been a lot of what you would call summer event movies that have kind of fizzled out and just haven't been what we hoped. I blanked out, just to back up for a second. I, for about 30 seconds, couldn't remember that Paul Newman in The Color of Money and in The Hustler played a character called Ed Felson, or Fast Eddie. So I apologize. I should have name-dropped the character. But 35 years ago today, July 3rd, 1991, Terminator 2 opened in theaters. And this was one of the biggest. This film had so much advance buzz in the 100% pre-internet era. The awareness factor was as through the roof as a similar kind of summer event movie would be right now. And that is in tribute and a testament to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who did every possible talk show he could From, the Johnny Carsons on down, Arsenio, he was on every one of the talk shows of the day. He appeared in the music video, the tie-in with Guns N' Roses, because Guns N' Roses had, an album coming out, or 2 albums, Use Your Illusion 1 and Use Your Illusion 2, and the song You Could Be Mine. There was the cross-promotion with that, and Arnold, I don't think he even got paid extra. He knew it would be a great look if he appeared in the music video, interacting with Axl Rose in character as the T-800. Just an incredible build-up. And the first time that people saw any media related to Terminator 2 was was Total Recall. When Total Recall landed in theaters, that would have been late June of 1990. And there are people right now that will say, yes, Terminator 2 is great, but the single best movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger ever appeared in, starred in, or what have you, is actually the answer to that question is Total Recall. And there'll be some other Gen Xers that say the answer to that question is Predator. I'm not here to take sides. I'm not here to, well, this film is better than that film, because this is all so subjective. But I can tell you, I can testify, and there are Gen Xers and young boomers out there that remember this. The number of people talking about Terminator 2 with zero internet, everybody had their hand on the pulse of this, and we could not wait for it to come out. And the assumption from this would be, well, the first Terminator, great movie, must have been a huge hit, and that's why people were so excited, because we've seen sequels where the awareness factor was through the roof in the internet era, and then sometimes they're good and sometimes they suck. But that's an explanation for why so many people are into it. Well, the movie was a huge hit, of course. A lot of people were really geeked up about Avatar 2, speaking of James Cameron, because the first one was so beloved. So many people went to see that film multiple times in theaters. I like Avatar. I don't love it. I don't have it in my James Cameron top 5. And it's not like he's made as many movies as Spielberg. So a top 5 looks different from James Cameron than it does for Spielberg or a Hitchcock or somebody with a seemingly endless filmography. But the awareness factor was through the roof. We started to see full previews of Terminator 2. I was in 11th grade, in the middle of June of 1991, and we're seeing these incredible, I think there were 2 separate previews that were airing on TV. Like, for example, this is so absurd, but this is what happened. Arnold's appearing on Carson, Arnold's appearing on Letterman, whatever it is. They show like a full minute preview of the film to coincide with him being on the show. Again, this seems very analog, but that's the kind of thing that was done. Anything to get people into it, to promote the movie, to promote the idea of this, well, this could be a franchise, which, for better or worse, it did become a franchise. I mean, you might argue they should have just, we're all set here, just ended at 2 and no more Terminator movies ever. But Arnold, always a good sport, a great self-promoter, going back to his bodybuilding days. He knew how to smile for the cameras and talk himself up, and in some cases talk up his competitors. His rivalry with Lou Ferrigno, who was, again, that's what he was bigger than Arnold, but he had that gift to sort of promote without it seeming, what his wife says in Last Action Hero, it doesn't seem like low forehead stuff. It doesn't seem like it was beneath him the way that he did it. So the thing that I remember about the promotion of Terminator 2 is that Arnold gave away the secret to the movie. Spoiler alert, he gave away a major plot point because he legitimately was so excited he couldn't wait to tell people about it, and he correctly guesstimated it wasn't going to hurt sales. If anything, it was going to help sales if, as he said on Arsenio Hall, I believe was the first late night talk show that he said this, I played a killing machine, just what you would think from a Terminator in the first one. In this one, I play a good Terminator. To say that Arnold plays the good guy in Terminator 2 would be a stretch, but he is part of the group of people essentially fighting for the resistance or the rebellion, if you want to, go Star Wars, because you can do that. Cyberdyne, Skynet, that's the Empire. In case you were confused about where are the allegiances in these movies. The Empire, those are the bad guys in Star Wars. Grand Moff Tarkin, that's not the good guy over there. Luke Skywalker, good guy. Right? Han Solo, good guy. Princess Leia, they're on the correct team. Darth Vader, not on the correct team. You want to do an inverse Star Wars, and you want to make the argument when Vader, at the very end, another spoiler of Return of the Jedi, when he returns to human form, there's your heel turn, right? No, that's not what it is. That's him embracing the light after decades in the dark. But Arnold was so happy to be playing a hero adjacent, to not do the same thing they did in the first movie, to not be a remorseless, vicious killing machine, who ultimately kind of gets outmaneuvered by a woman with zero training. But that's how, that's movies, that's Hollywood, and that's how you do it. You have to have a situation where you say, well, how the hell could this... They settle that in the sequel by creating another Terminator that is far more advanced than Arnold, the T-1000, played brilliantly by Robert Patrick. Man, what an amazing... It wasn't his debut, but a kind of a coming out party for a kind of fresh new talent. Robert Patrick has had a terrific career. You look at him, even in a movie like Copland, where he's buried like 8th or 9th in the cast, he makes an impression. He's distinctive. Every role that he's in, he brings something to it, a little bit of gravitas, especially because of his work in Terminator. Hey, that's the guy from Terminator 2. But I remember as the days were kind of ticking off the calendar and the excitement factor, because it was James Cameron, because he had already done The Terminator, because he had done Aliens, which to this day I believe is the best film that James Cameron ever made, either theatrical cut or the so-called director's cut. Aliens, to me, is his magnum opus. He will not ever make a better movie or a movie as good. That is just about as close to a perfect film as you can get. It's coming up on its 40th anniversary. July 18th, why do I remember that day? Go back to Walbrook. Speaking of Rain Man, go back to Walbrook, stay with Charlie Babbitt. Never officially diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum because he didn't do that, but I have a sneaking suspicion. And if I'd been born 20 years later, no, Jeremy, he's okay. Yeah, he's okay. He's just going to need a little bit more time to fit in and to interact properly. That part was true. But James Cameron had done Terminator, he had done Aliens, he had done The Abyss, which is an unfortunate situation where he turned in a 3-hour cut, and literally Barry Diller, who was running Fox at the time, sat down with him, or that arm of Fox, I should say, and Rupert Murdoch was involved, and they said, Jim, you made an incredible movie, but we are going to have to cut it because we can't get enough screenings per day with a 3-hour movie. It was a little bit like, to a lesser extent, Quentin Tarantino turning in a 4-hour cut of Kill Bill and thinking, I'm sorry, I fucked up, but I don't know what to do. I don't even know what to cut here. And unfortunately, Harvey Weinstein saying, Quentin, don't cut a thing. We're just going to split it. We'll figure out a way to fit it, to split it into 2 parts, and we'll just go from there. Now you can watch the whole bloody affair. If you want to do it in one shot, you can do it in one shot. But Cameron had to cut a half hour from The Abyss. It hurt the film. The director's cut of The Abyss I have as James Cameron's 3rd best movie. That is how great that film is. The confidence, is what I'm saying, was very high that Cameron was going to deliver a really good movie. This was not going to be... Terminator 2 has not been screened for critics at this time. Word from the set, again, in the analog era, little bits and pieces of information seem to suggest this film is a home run. Insiders are happy, like even just reading Time magazine, little quick blurbs and quick reports, New York Magazine. The studio is very excited. Early screenings are through the roof. Now, sometimes those stories are bullshit, but in this case, it just felt like it was true. So I remember going into July, I was going to Fort Lauderdale to visit my dad's parents, if I may say, my 2 favorite people in the world. Grandpa's been gone since 2010. Grandma unfortunately passed in 94. She was still in her 70s when she died. But I was excited to see them, and I was convinced I'd be able to talk my grandfather into taking me to see Terminator 2. So we get there, we took the train. My mom and sister and myself took Amtrak. That was a long ride. It was 20 hours, and in 1991, I had little handheld Game Boy type shit, but it was a long ride without any phone or music or YouTube or movies or anything. That was a long day's journey into night, into day. And that is no exaggeration. It is a lot easier to tolerate long trips, whether by train, plane, boat, whatever you want to say. It's a lot easier now than it was back in the Stone Ages of early July of 1991. But I remember getting to Grandpa's condo. We lived at Cypress Chase in Lauderdale Lakes, Florida. And the movie was coming out the next day. As luck would have it, my grandfather asked me if I wanted to see it. He had read about it, and he'd seen the ads on TV, and I guess the Terminator, the original, had been on, and he had seen it a couple of times. My grandfather watched a lot of movies, but if we're being honest, he conked out at least half the time. He was a notorious snoozer, regardless of if the movie was good. If the movie was bad, he was for sure going to be asleep. But he said he liked the original. He wanted to see the sequel. And I remember getting up the next morning. I was so excited. We were going to go to like an 8 a.m. screening. Like they had an extra screening at the local theater about a mile away from Grandpa's condo. The Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel, which now I think is just the Florida Sun-Sentinel. They used to have different editions depending on where you are in the state. I mean, it's not that crazy of an idea. Maybe now it would seem like overkill. But the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel gave the film 3.5 stars and said, "Be ready. The special effects are the slickest that you will ever see on the big screen or have ever seen or are groundbreaking." I forgot the exact phraseology. It was something like that. You're going to see shit that you've never seen before. And we went to see the movie, and that's exactly what it was. Now some of the effects work is quaint because we've seen morphing for 35 years. But I can tell you that in the theaters, and it was a little bit more than half full, which is insane for an 8:30 a.m. screening. I think that's what it was. The moment in the movie when the hospital chase sequence, when you're still in the hospital and our heroes are attempting to get successfully to the parking lot and make their escape. The T-1000 is chasing them. They're still in the building at this point. Arnold has just made his appearance to Sarah Connor and freaked her out, which almost gets everybody killed with the exception of the T-800, who wouldn't be so easy to kill even for the T-1000. But the moment in the movie where Robert Patrick's T-1000 attempts to go through the bars, the way that his face moves through. Now I'm telling you, there was a percentage of people in the theater that jumped out of their seats. We had never seen CGI like that. We had never seen it. It hadn't been done. There had never been a visual effects shot like that one shot. And then the little visual joke of, he can go through the bars, but his gun can't. And the way he clangs the gun, just gold. So, not only did the local paper there give the film 3.5 out of 4, there were already print reviews because most of the major critics, the Siskel and Eberts, they were both in great health at that time. I don't even think either guy had turned 50 yet. No, they hadn't. They would have still been in their 40s. They'd been around for 15, 20 years. In the case of Ebert, he'd been a big-time critic since the late 60s when he won his Pulitzer. But the major critics had seen the film 1 to 2 weeks in advance. The reason why I even say that is on the day the movie opened, when you opened your newspaper, you were inundated not just with ads for the film, but with all of the just unbelievable critical reviews. Almost every major critic, with the exception of Richard Corliss at Time magazine, he was the only major critic that did not like the movie, to my knowledge. Everyone else either loved it or said there's so much great stuff in here, or go to see it for the effects work and the really incredible stunt work and action sequences. Richard Corliss, for whatever reason, he said the film was dead on arrival. He said it's nowhere near as good as the first. I don't know what Cameron was doing here. He was the outlier. There's always got to be an outlier, I should say, almost always. So we saw the movie, all 2 hours and 15 minutes of it, and I was enthralled the whole way through. And even as a kid who was not really in very good shape physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, I was already a big Arnold fan. I imagined that someday I would be into fitness and I wouldn't, always be this kind of roly-poly kid, but I was a big Arnold fan, and I walked out of the theater elevated. I walked out of the theater feeling a lot better than I did when I got into the theater. The film strikes a very hopeful tone. And you don't necessarily expect philosophical nourishment, philosophical enrichment in a summer action movie in the early 90s where it's a lot of shit blowing up real good. But the film has points to make. And it makes them in such a way where it doesn't feel like you're being beaten over the head. It doesn't feel like a message is being shoved down your throat. It feels organic to the story. And that's the genius of James Cameron's screenplay and the way that he thought this through before he figured out exactly how they were going to shoot it and exactly how are we going to tell this story. Are we going to do what we did in the first movie, which is all of the exposition comes as characters getting shot at? That's one way to do it. Or are we going to have moments of pause and take more time? Well, I would say that in the director's cut, the longer version of Terminator 2, there are more scenes that are a little bit expanded, but the characters can breathe a little bit more. But in my opinion, similar to Aliens, whether you see the theatrical cut or the director's cut, this film is 4 stars out of 4, as Aliens is still one of the greatest movies ever made, regardless of which version. I prefer the director's cut of Aliens when you learn that Ellen Ripley had a daughter that she left behind to go on the voyage. I don't know why they had to cut that. I guess they cut that for time also, but I prefer the director's cut by a fraction, even though there are things I could talk about why the theatrical cut is actually better, but I prefer the director's cut. With Terminator 2, I prefer the theatrical cut. I actually think it's fun to see the other footage, but I don't think it makes the movie any better. There's a little bit more stuff. Arnold gets a few laughs, interacting the scene where he picks up the kid. There's a little bit more with that. He learns how to smile. I think the theatrical cut is just about perfect. So later in the same trip, Grandpa took me to see another big movie from that summer, Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, which is a lot different than Terminator 2. That was a big hit that summer. I think dollar for dollar, that was a bigger hit than the first Naked Gun, which had come out, I guess, about 2.5 years prior. The end of the vacation, went home, and my dad was a big movie fan. A huge, you could argue almost as big a movie fan as me. Or maybe he was, but he was not an academic. He never took classes or anything like that in cinema. He just did a lot of reading, and he had, New York Magazine used to read David Denby's movie column every week. He was really into it. But he was not the sort of person who would go to the movies on his own. I don't know that he ever went to the movies by himself in the last, 40 years of his life. I'm pretty sure he never went to the movies by himself. So I had asked him, because I was telling him, this is incredible, can we see it when I get home? Yeah, of course. And we were living in Woodbury at the time, what is now the Equinox Gym, if you're a Long Islander and you're familiar with this area, what's now the Equinox Gym off of Jericho Turnpike in the Syosset, Woodbury area. That was a one-plex. It was called a Cinema 150. And my father's apartment was, well, it's still there. It's called Eagle Rock, and it used to be just called Fairhaven. It's right across the street from what is now the Equinox Gym. And the Route 135 entrance exit was just a little bit, about 500 feet to the west is how I would describe it. So I came in via train. I came in via train, but I went right into the city that day. We took the 20-hour ride. My mother and sister went back to Massapequa, and I took the subway to my father's office. And we had a plan that's what I was going to do. I was going to take the subway to his office. I got there probably about 2 o'clock, something like that. And then we were going to go home. He was going to go home early because it was the summer. And then we were going to see Terminator 2. So this would have probably been about 9 or 10 days after I saw it in Fort Lauderdale with my grandfather. And we went home on the train, got together, went across the street to the Cinema 150 in Syosset. And the theater was actually a lot better there. The one in Florida was not enhanced. There was no Dolby Digital or any of that kind of stuff. It was just your very basic, low level, whatever 1991 in a normal theater without any enhancements whatsoever. The film was still incredible. The Cinema 150 had been modified. It had been upgraded. And all of the visual and especially audio additions had it. And the sound was beyond anything I could have imagined. The movie played better the second time, even though I knew what was going to happen, because it was a much more immersive experience with all of the surround sound and Dolby Digital and Digital Domain, that's Cameron's company, and everything that went into it. So I saw Terminator 2 for that second time, and my father loved it. I think it immediately would have gone into his all-time top 10 favorite movies. Okay, he liked the first one, But I don't think he was even as big of a fan of the first one as I was, because I talked it up for years. I don't think he saw it until like 1990 or something like that, and then he finally watched, okay, it's pretty good. But he never thought, oh my God, the first one is like this incredible science fiction film. He thought it was fun, the action was good, you know, a few one-line, fuck you, asshole, you know, a lot of that. But he thought the second one just blew the first one out of the water. And Dad had seen Total Recall, and Total Recall immediately became his favorite Arnold film. Dad loved Arnold, and I mean, I joked about this in a different episode. My father's favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger moment, it was not "I'll be back," because that's everybody's thing. How many different movies from Twins on down does he say "I'll be back"? My dad's favorite Arnold moment is in The Running Man, when he manages to dispatch the Gus Leftwich character. He was a buzzsaw, the guy with the motorcycle guy with the chainsaw. And after he manages to dispatch chainsaw-wielding buzzsaw, the Maria Conchita Alonso character, who was elsewhere with the guy with all the crap and the opera singer, the Erland Van Lith character, Dynamo, she asks Arnold a legitimate question, what happened to buzzsaw? He had to split. I can tell you, my father, may he rest in eternal cinematic paradise, the biggest movie fan, the biggest Yankee fan I've ever known. For the last 3 decades of his life, anytime Arnold Schwarzenegger appeared on his TV screen, it didn't matter what he was doing. Hey, look, it's Governor Schwarzenegger. It didn't matter. From 1980, whatever year he first saw The Running Man, anytime Arnold's face popped up on screen, my father, as though on cue, he would immediately randomly go, he had to split. He did that for close to 30 years. He had to split from The Running Man was my father. That's the catchphrase that he remembered. He had to split. But he loved Total Recall. He loved Terminator 2. He loved The Running Man. And we saw True Lies 3 years later in the same theater, and he was a big fan of that movie too. He definitely was an Arnold guy. But the build-up to this film is so often in life, and you could apply this to anything, when you look forward to something for as long as myself and other Gen X movie fans and young boomers and regular boomers, as geeked up as we were to see it, how could it not disappoint the fact that it exceeded expectations? That's on James Cameron, and that's on Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Robert Patrick, Edward Furlong, and the always great Joe Morton, because the entire cast really brought it. And hey, the effects team, the stunt team, and the way that Cameron was able to keep everything in line. He didn't panic if they had issues, and when they were shooting, the reservoir, so many things could have gone wrong there. They just, pedal to the metal, literally, figuratively, and symbolically. And even like Steven Spielberg, within the last couple of years, talked about it. This is one of his favorite movies. He said, I saw it just like all of you did, and I couldn't believe what Jim was able to pull off. That was crazy. When you have a fellow filmmaker and you know that Spielberg was thinking to himself, how would I have tried to shoot this? Well, I don't know. I'm confident that with the same script, Spielberg would have made a good movie. I don't think it would have been as good as what Cameron came up with. Speaking of which, I just read a funny blurb from James Cameron saying that, Steven beat me to Jurassic Park by a couple of hours. I was up for it, and then he got it. He said, I'm glad he ended up doing it because I would have made a much nastier movie. I would have gone deeper into what the book goes into, and it was a lot more vicious. Ironically, a lot of people said that Jurassic Park was a dinosaur version of Aliens. So there you go. There were people talking about James Cameron's Aliens and comparing it. The scene with the raptor attack is very similar in Jurassic Park to one of the many moments actually in the movie Aliens. But that's neither here nor there. Happy 64th birthday to Tom Cruise, to circle all the way back to the first thing that I said. Tom Cruise, born July 3rd, 1962, and happy 35th anniversary to the release of the greatest summer movie ever made, an event movie which not only lived up to the hype, but blew the hype all the way out of the water, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. I'll spare you the exaggerated wrap-up, and I want to thank you for joining me on this brutally hot. My car was reading 101, and I don't mean the inside temperature. I mean the outside temperature. New York enveloped in this mythical, but it's a real thing, it's not really mythical, heat dome. So I hope you have a great rest of your July 3rd. And on July 4th, please be safe, have all of the fun you possibly can, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Or as Arnold Schwarzenegger says in this movie, I'll be back. Peace.